This story takes place in a high school, where a female bully is smugly humming a song, while another girl, Dong-eun, lies on the ground beside her having suffered from relentless harassment. Dong-eun, a determined and strong-willed student, refused to comply with the demands of the school bully, Park Yeon-jin. This defiance resulted in her becoming a target for humiliation and mistreatment by Yeon-jin and her group of followers. Feeling helpless, Dong-eun tried to de-escalate the situation, but it only worsened. Two boys forced her to stand in the pouring rain for an extended period, using the situation as a form of intimidation. One of them, with a sinister smile, appeared to enjoy her distress, reveling in the power imbalance. After enduring persistent emotional and physical mistreatment, Dong-eun decided to seek help from the authorities. However, Yeon-jin's well-connected mother intervened, and soon after, the case was dismissed without any consequences for the perpetrators. Dong-eun could only watch as the offenders' parents casually took their children home, showing no remorse for their actions. What hurt even more was the reaction of her homeroom teacher. Instead of offering support, he dismissed the incident as mere teenage conflicts. He showed clear favoritism toward Yeon-jin due to her wealthy background, while treating Dong-eun, who came from a struggling family, with complete indifference. The mistreatment did not stop there. Yeon-jin, shaped by the values of her controlling and status-driven mother, had developed a sense of entitlement. Believing that power and money could justify any action, she saw tormenting others as a means of asserting her superiority, and Dong-eun became the primary target of her amusement. Several of Yeon-jin's followers, including Gunwoo and Haejong, actively participated in making Dong-eun's school life unbearable. Yeon-jin made it clear seeking help was pointless, and resisting was futile. Despite her attempts to endure the situation, the emotional toll on Dong-eun deepened. Her classmates and teachers turned a blind eye, choosing silence over confrontation. One day, covered in bruises, Dong-eun sought medical attention from the school nurse. The nurse, noticing her injuries and her attempt to conceal them, tried to offer support. However, just as she was about to encourage Dong-eun to seek justice, an ominous phone call interrupted them. The moment the curtain was pulled back, Dong-eun felt a chill down her spine. Yeon-jin was standing there. She openly admitted to her actions, leaving the nurse speechless. A few months later, Dong-eun discovered that the nurse had been let go, likely due to Yeon-jin's influence. Returning to her small residence that evening, Dong-eun heard familiar, mocking laughter outside. As she attempted to leave, Gunwoo blocked her path, while Haejong opened the door to a grim scene. Yeon-jin, with her usual smug expression, ordered her lackeys to search through Dong-eun's belongings, throwing her hidden piggy bank to the ground and scattering its contents. For them, this act was a way to reaffirm their sense of superiority. But they weren't done. Yeon-jin suggested humiliating Dong-eun further, expecting her compliance. However, Dong-eun's refusal angered her, and the harassment escalated. As the first snowflakes of winter fell outside, the atmosphere inside the room grew tense. A song played in the background, the melody blending with Dong-eun's quiet sobs. After experiencing relentless torment, Dong-eun climbed to the rooftop. As she stood there, staring down at the world below, the weight of despair threatened to consume her. However, at the last moment, she hesitated, not out of fear, but because she refused to let her suffering define her fate. The overwhelming emotions finally broke through, and she collapsed onto the cold ground, her body trembling as the first snowflakes of winter fell around her. In that moment, the long-suppressed pain, grievances, and helplessness surfaced. She had never felt more alone. The icy air stung her wounds, the cold seeping into her body. Instead of bringing relief, it intensified the discomfort, an unbearable itch spreading from her legs to every part of her. She reached for the snow, trying to numb the sensation, but as she removed her jacket, she was confronted with the reality of what she had endured. The scars that covered her skin told a silent, painful story. Her once unbreakable spirit now felt shattered. For the first time, she lowered her head, conceding to the weight of it all. With no other option left, she applied for withdrawal from school, citing the relentless mistreatment as her reason. When her homeroom teacher received the application, his reaction was immediate and harsh. He called Dong-eun into his office, reprimanding her for bringing unnecessary trouble. Instead of acknowledging her suffering, he accused her of affecting his professional standing, claiming that such a reason on record would damage the school's reputation and his evaluation as a teacher. Dong-eun, unwilling to be silenced, stood her ground. She revealed the bruises and marks she had hidden for so long, hoping that, finally, someone would acknowledge her pain. But the teacher remained unmoved. "If this were your own child, would you still dismiss it so easily?" she asked. her voice filled with unshaken determination. This question struck a nerve, but instead of self-reflection, the teacher reacted with anger. He removed his watch, a gesture Dong-eun had seen before, a symbol of his impatience for those he deemed insignificant. Yet, no amount of intimidation could force her to change her mind. She refused to rewrite her application, but just when she thought she had fought her final battle, she was met with an even more devastating betrayal. Yeon-jin's mother, along with the teacher, approached Dong-eun's own mother with an offer money in exchange for erasing any mention of bullying. The moment Dong-eun's mother accepted the bribe, her fate was sealed. With a fabricated reason of inability to adapt to school life, Dong-eun was officially expelled. The school erased all traces of what had happened. Her suffering was swept under the rug, hidden behind a well-crafted lie. Her hardships didn't end there. Upon returning home, she found her belongings scattered outside. The landlord, apologetic but helpless, informed her, "It was your mother's decision." At that moment, her world truly collapsed. All that remained, the last shreds of dignity she had clung to, were destroyed by the one person who was supposed to stand by her side. On that bitter winter night, she stood by the river, staring at the icy water, her heart weighed down by unbearable sorrow. She removed her shoes, the cold seeping into her skin, but instead of surrendering to despair, something unexpected happened. The shock of the freezing water jolted her awake, bringing clarity rather than hopelessness. She had spent years asking herself, why should the victim bow to the perpetrator? Now, for the first time, she had an answer. If she was not afraid of death, why should she be afraid of those who had tried to break her? At that moment, Dong-eun made a choice not to be defeated, but to rise. For years, she had searched for a sign, for hope, for justice, but all she had seen was a world where power protected the guilty, while the innocent were left to suffer. She no longer believed in false justice. She no longer placed her faith in a world that had failed her. Instead, she turned her pain into strength, her hatred into resolve. She would no longer run, she would face them. And so, when Yeon-jin and her group found a new victim to torment, they were unprepared for what came next. As they laughed at their newest target, a shadow approached. It was Dong-eun, but she was not the same girl they once tormented. She walked toward them with unwavering confidence, her presence alone enough to silence the crowd. For the first time, Yeon-jin hesitated. For the first time, she felt uneasy. "What do you want?" she scoffed, masking her discomfort with arrogance. Dong-eun's response sent chills through them all. "I want to be you." The words were simple, yet the way she said them with a chilling, knowing smile left them speechless. The 5 people who had tormented her for so long no longer saw her as the weak girl they once mocked. They saw something far more terrifying, someone who had risen from the ashes, ready to change everything. From that day on, Dong-eun dedicated herself to her transformation. By day, she worked tirelessly. By night, she studied under the dim hallway lights, preparing herself for the future she had set in motion. She no longer lived as a victim, she was preparing for justice. One night, an unfamiliar girl in the factory observed Dong-eun's unwavering determination. Without saying a word, she tiptoed back to her dorm, careful not to disturb the girl who refused to be broken. Years passed, and Dong-eun's hard work paid off. She not only completed her education through self-study, but she earned a place in university. It was there that she met Cheon-hee, her first true friend, and later, a crucial ally in her pursuit of justice. While Dong-eun rebuilt her life, her former tormentors thrived in the world they had always known. Gunwoo remained a devoted follower to Jae-jun, clinging to the illusion of status. Hae-jong fulfilled her dream of becoming a flight attendant, though she still bowed to those she once envied. Sara became an artist, yet struggled with creative droughts, turning to unhealthy means for inspiration. And at the top, Yeon-jin had it all: marriage to a billionaire, a successful career, and the illusion of a perfect life. But Dong-eun had not forgotten. She had spent years preparing, watching from the shadows. Now, the time had come. As they continued their seemingly perfect lives, none of them noticed the presence lurking nearby. Dong-eun had waited long enough, and her plan was only just beginning. This included researching Yeon-jin's fiancé, Do-yeon, who was also a crucial part of Dong-eun's revenge plan. Before taking any action, she knew she needed to build her own foundation, especially financially. Determined, she took on multiple part-time jobs and tutoring work, enduring the challenges that came with them. Despite the occasional inappropriate gazes from some of her students, she reminded herself that compared to what she had endured in the past, this was nothing. In a moment of strategic calculation, she took out her phone and subtly implied to a student that unless she was fairly compensated, certain rumors could easily spread. She knew how to navigate these situations now, calmly, tactfully, and always in control. However, the toll of years of overwork finally caught up to her. On her way home one evening, a wave of dizziness overtook her, and she collapsed onto the pavement. When she regained consciousness, she found herself in a hospital, hooked up to N4. Next to her was another patient, Yeo-jong, a medical intern, receiving his own treatment. Their eyes met. For Yeo-jong, it was an inexplicable moment. His heart pounded in a way he hadn't experienced before. It was as if he had just witnessed something profound, something destined. Before he could process his thoughts, Dong-eun instinctively pulled away. As she attempted to remove the 4 from her arm, Yeo-jong, in a professional yet gentle manner, stepped forward to assist her. That's when he noticed the faint yet unmistakable scars on her hands. Curiosity flickered across his face, but before he could utter a word, Dong-eun quickly pulled down her sleeves and turned away. She had no interest in letting anyone see her past. Later, through a senior colleague, Yeo-jong learned that Dong-eun's health condition was far more serious than she let on. His concern for her deepened. It wasn't just admiration anymore, he wanted to understand her. A few days later, Yeo-jong unexpectedly showed up at Dong-eun's school. Most of the students assumed he was just another privileged young man sneaking onto campus to meet someone. But Dong-eun knew better. When he waited for her outside her classroom, she walked toward him with a knowing smile. For a fleeting moment, Yeo-jong thought this was his chance, his opportunity to connect with her. But then, with a swift gesture, Dong-eun signaled someone behind her. Realization struck. She had been aware of his presence all along, and this was no coincidence. Feeling foolish, Yeo-jong turned and left. What he didn't realize was that Dong-eun had been watching him all along. She wasn't just testing him, she was evaluating him. Because this man was not just an admirer, he was a piece in her game. Dong-eun, usually composed and calculated, began to craft a new role for herself. She allowed herself to appear vulnerable just enough for Yeo-jong to be drawn in. Over time, he became deeply infatuated with her. Dong-eun's charm was undeniable, but she didn't rely on it alone. Every move she made was intentional. One evening, by sheer coincidence, Dong-eun found herself at a park, observing a game of Go. It was there that she encountered Yeo-jong again. For the first time, she gave him the opportunity to approach her on her terms. When she discovered his skill in Go, she leaned into her curiosity, asking him to teach her. Yeo-jong happily agreed, unaware that he was stepping further into her world. They played countless rounds, a silent yet intricate dance of strategy, much like the real game they were playing against one another. And then, when the time was right, she stepped away. Without hesitation, she ended their interactions. Yeo-jong, left bewildered, didn't understand what had gone wrong, but for Dong-eun, it was simple. Romance was a luxury she couldn't afford. Her focus remained unshaken. Revenge came first. As Dong-eun advanced toward her goal, Yeon-jin thrived in her seemingly perfect world. Not only did she have a flourishing career as a weather anchor, but she also had a devoted husband, Do-yeon, who provided her with anything she desired. When she wanted to dominate the television network, he secured high-profile ad spaces just for her, while other hosts worked tirelessly to craft their own scripts. Yeon-jin simply paid someone to do the work for her. All she had to do was memorize the lines and bask in the praise. She rewarded those beneath her with meaningless gifts, yet they remained endlessly grateful. To the world, she was untouchable. She and Do-yeon had a beautiful daughter, a prestigious lifestyle, and a seemingly perfect marriage. But cracks began to form. Do-yeon casually mentioned Hae-jong, saying she had brought up Yeon-jin's past at a gathering. A wave of anxiety rushed through Yeon-jin. Had Hae-jong finally lost control of her loose tongue? Had her perfect life just been put at risk? But as it turned out, it was a false alarm. Still, Yeon-jin knew better than to let things spiral out of control. She arranged a meeting with Hae-jong, masking her concern behind a polite invitation. But the gathering was no simple reunion. It was a carefully orchestrated power move. Unbeknownst to Hae-jong, Sara was in on the plan as well. Before the meeting, Sara had set the stage, providing a subtle but humiliating reminder that Hae-jong didn't truly belong in their world. The trick was simple. Hae-jong, desperate to appear elite, had a habit of sneaking into her family's laundromat to where expensive clothes customers had sent for cleaning. On this particular occasion, Sara had made sure the outfit was just slightly off. It didn't fit quite right. It didn't belong to her. It was a silent yet cutting message. And when Yeon-jin finally spoke, her words were coated in false concern. "I just wanted to remind you, Hae-jong, watch your mouth." Beneath her polite smile, the threat was clear. Facing the two strong-willed women, Hae-jong could only nod tearfully, understanding exactly what Yeon-jin wanted. She had no choice. She knew her position in their hierarchy and the consequences of defiance. As the true owner of the clothes, Sara had never cared about who else had worn them. To her, those so-called luxury dresses were just another part of her collection, nothing more than fabric. But for Hae-jong, that limited edition outfit was something she could only afford after saving for half a year's salary. So, after Yeonjin and Sara left, Hae-jong quickly adjusted her attitude. She took out her phone, snapped a few selfies, and immediately posted them to social media. Her caption, a heartfelt thank you to her dear friend for gifting her such exquisite attire. She knew her place. If she couldn't truly belong in their world, she would at least make it look like she did. Among the 5 who once tormented Dong-eun, Gunwoo's situation was perhaps the most humiliating. A single slap from Jae-joon had permanently solidified the power dynamic between them. Jae-joon held all the control, and Gunwoo hated it. Hae-jong's shamelessness had only made Gunwoo resent their entire group more. He vowed that one day, he would rise above them even if it meant stepping on their heads to do it. And that was exactly why Dong-eun decided to target him first. One day, Dong-eun deliberately walked into Jae-joon's luxury store, making sure to catch Gunwoo's attention, and just as planned, Gunwoo immediately recognized her. That moment of recognition, that flicker of disbelief and curiosity in his eyes, was exactly what she had been waiting for. After all, had it not been for Gunwoo's assistance, she would have never suffered as much as she did in high school. But after years of careful observation, Dong-eun understood Gunwoo better than he understood himself. Gunwoo wasn't the type to remain at the bottom forever. He wanted more. He wanted power, influence, and the kind of wealth that Jae-joon had. And so, Dong-eun used a method specifically designed for him. She didn't hide her intentions. She walked right up to him and asked a simple yet powerful question. What if everything you see in front of you right now could belong to you? She let her words sink in. She understood his hunger. She knew exactly what it felt like to be trampled on, and Gunwoo couldn't resist. In that moment, his confidence skyrocketed. He was eager, desperate to see what he could gain from cooperating with her. Little did he know, he was walking right into Dong-eun's trap. At this point, Dong-eun had already secured a lease on an apartment located right next to Yeonjin's mansion. From dawn until dusk, she could now observe Yeonjin's every move. She watched as Yeonjin maintained her carefully curated image of the perfect wife and mother, but Dong-eun knew the truth. She had studied Yeonjin long enough to identify her greatest weakness, her daughter. For Yeonjin, her carefully constructed life revolved around preserving her role as the ideal mother, and Dong-eun intended to use that to her advantage. Her next step? Getting herself transferred to the prestigious Citizens Elementary School where Yeonjin's daughter was enrolled. However, before she could officially begin her plan, there was still one crucial obstacle to overcome: the school board. Only a board member's approval could secure her a position at Citizens Elementary School. And so, Dong-eun had spent the last 6 months collecting information on one particular board member. Every night, she painstakingly gathered discarded documents, receipts, and notes from the board member's trash. She was looking for something, anything that could give her leverage. And then, one night, everything almost fell apart. During her most recent information collection, Dong-eun suddenly felt a chill down her spine. She turned only to find herself face to face with the board member's housekeeper, a woman who had been watching her for 6 months. The realization hit her instantly. She had been caught. Although Dong-eun always avoided the surveillance cameras, the housekeeper had already taken a photo of her. At first, Dong-eun assumed the housekeeper was trying to blackmail her. However, to her surprise, the housekeeper had no interest in money. Instead, she made an unexpected proposition: cooperation. This caught Dong-eun off guard. Why would a stranger want to work with her? Only after pressing for details did she learn the truth. The housekeeper, Hae-nam, was also a victim. For years, Hae-nam had suffered in silence under the hands of her abusive husband. His unprovoked violence left her covered in bruises, and his cruelty extended beyond her. Even their daughter was not spared. One night, her daughter, desperate to protect her mother, grabbed a knife and stood up to her father. But it wasn't enough. The nightmare continued. Their home was no longer a place of safety, it was a prison where fear ruled. Hearing this, Dong-eun felt a deep sense of empathy. For the first time, she wasn't alone in her pain. 2 women, both survivors of unimaginable suffering, decided to join forces. It was no longer just about revenge, it was a battle between victims and their oppressors. Would justice finally prevail, or would the powerful once again win? To begin their plan, Dong-eun handed over detailed information about the 5 individuals she had been tracking. She hired Hae-nam under the guise of employment, paying her a daily wage to assist in gathering intelligence. At the same time, to maintain a sense of mutual respect, Dong-eun symbolically charged a small fee for tutoring Hyunam's daughter. This wasn't a master-servant dynamic. This was a partnership. Each woman had a goal, and they would help each other achieve it. To effectively follow Dong-eun's targets, Hyunam needed 2 essential skills: driving and photography. The first step? Learning to drive. Once she secured her license, the next skill was observation. Dong-eun patiently guided her through photography techniques, ensuring she could document important moments without detection. And before long, Hyunam proved to be a fast learner. One day, Hyunam captured a crucial set of photos. From them, Dong-eun noticed something unusual. Yeonjin frequently took her daughter to the eye clinic, but strangely, there never seemed to be any results. Then, a memory from high school resurfaced. Jae-jun, one of Yeonjin's closest allies, once attacked a classmate for calling him colorblind. Even though the claim wasn't fully confirmed, Jae-jun's reaction was extreme. Not even Gunwoo could hold him back. He brutally beat the boy. And now, decades later, Dong-eun finally understood why. By connecting Yeonjin's frequent clinic visits with Jae-jun's past outburst, everything became clear. Yeonjin's daughter, Yi-sol, was colorblind, and since colorblindness is genetic, there was only one possible explanation: Yeonjin's daughter was not Do-yeon's child. She was Jae-jun's. For Yeonjin, this truth was her biggest nightmare. She had built her entire life around her marriage to Do-yeon, securing status and wealth through their union. But if Do-yeon found out, her carefully constructed world would collapse. What Yeonjin didn't realize, however, was that her seemingly perfect husband was not as oblivious as she believed. Do-yeon was a man who noticed details. Much like his strategic mind and go, he saw patterns that others overlooked. There was one particular game that had once caught his attention. It was an unusual match. Several experienced players were repeatedly defeated by an unassuming woman. She was not famous. She was not highly ranked. Yet, she played with precision and ruthlessness. She set traps early on, watching as her opponents walked right into them. And when she won, she left without hesitation, collecting her earnings with quiet confidence. That woman was Dong-eun. That moment had left an impression on him. Though he wasn't the type to actively pursue people, he remembered her. And now, as the pieces of Dong-eun's revenge plan fell into place, their paths would cross again. With a strong ally by her side, Dong-eun knew she needed to act swiftly. Coincidentally, while tutoring Hyunam's daughter, she unexpectedly ran into an old acquaintance, Yeo-jong, the pure-hearted young man she had not seen in years. Through their brief exchange, she learned that Yeo-jong had now become an excellent doctor, but as much as she acknowledged his kindness, she couldn't afford to get too close. Her path was already set. There was no turning back. However, Yeo-jong was not willing to give up and handed Dong-eun a business card, hoping they could stay in touch. Dong-eun, however, remained indifferent. Her focus was solely on her plan. Later, when she returned home to check her mail, she was unexpectedly stopped by her landlady. With a curious look, the landlady asked whether Dong-eun had actually moved in yet. She noted that the water and electricity bills barely showed any usage. Dong-eun calmly explained her situation. She told the landlady that she was still working in Seoul but would officially move in soon. Why? Because she was about to start her new job at Citizens Elementary School, the very school Yeonjin's daughter attended. Dong-eun's ability to infiltrate the school was all thanks to Hyunam's careful investigation. Through months of research, they discovered that a key board member had an inappropriate relationship with his driver. Dong-eun used this knowledge to pressure him, and just like that, she secured her place at the school, not just as a teacher but as Yi-sol's homeroom teacher. At last, her true battleground was in place. In the shadows, Dong-eun secretly met with Gunwoo. She had an offer, one that he couldn't ignore. Her trump card? Someone they all knew. A girl they had bullied long ago. A girl who had taken her own life by jumping off a building. Upon hearing this, Gunwoo was visibly shaken. He denied any involvement in her death. But Dong-eun wasn't looking for excuses. She needed his help to uncover the real murderer, one of the 5. In exchange for this information, she demanded something from him. Jae-jun's hair. She needed solid proof to confirm her theory. Dong-eun assured him she had no intention of taking revenge on him, but she knew the truth. Gunwoo valued only one thing: his own life. And bit by bit, he was walking into a trap from which there was no escape. The other 4 continued living their carefree lives. They attended a luxurious high school reunion, celebrating their success, but something was off. While chatting, they realized that Gunwoo had been strangely unreachable, and before they could process their concerns, a figure appeared behind Yeonjin. They came face to face with someone they thought they had erased from their lives, except for Sarah, who deliberately pretended not to recognize her. The others were completely shocked. The confidence radiating from Dong-eun unsettled them. How could it be? The girl they once tormented now stood before them successful, composed, untouchable. It was almost ironic, but in the midst of the tension, one person reacted differently. Someone in the crowd cheered wildly for her. Dong-eun's presence sent a wave of unease through Yeon-jin. She couldn't ignore the unsettling power shift. After the ceremony, her emotions boiled over. In the gym, she lost control, and in a fit of rage, Yeon-jin slapped Dong-eun. But before things could escalate, Jae-jun immediately stopped her. They were no longer high school students. They weren't just reckless kids anymore, they were people of high status now. Their actions had consequences. Dong-eun, however, remained unfazed. She didn't flinch. In fact, she was pleased. For the first time, even these people, these so-called powerful figures, were afraid of her. With a calm, knowing smile, Dong-eun spoke. She subtly pointed out Yeon-jin's seemingly perfect family life. A life that had been so carefully curated. A life that she controlled. The veiled words struck a nerve. Yeon-jin's fear deepened. Who was this woman standing before her? Had she really been the same girl they once bullied? Or was she something much more dangerous? Yeon-jin, still unaware of the looming crisis, received an unexpected phone call in the afternoon. It was her daughter, shocked, confused, and a little uneasy. Her new homeroom teacher was someone she had heard about before, someone her mother knew very well. Upon hearing this, Yeon-jin's heart dropped. She hadn't anticipated that Dong-eun's revenge would come so suddenly, and so directly. This wasn't a game anymore. Yeon-jin couldn't hold back her emotions any longer. She immediately sought out Dong-eun, demanding answers. Had she unknowingly walked into a trap? But even as she confronted her, Yeon-jin still underestimated Dong-eun. To her, someone from Dong-eun's background had no place standing against her. Dong-eun should have quietly disappeared, married a poor man, lived a simple life, and never dared to challenge her. At least, that's what Yeon-jin thought. She truly believed that Dong-eun was still beneath her. But Dong-eun? She remained completely calm. Revenge is painful, she admitted, but reaching this point is actually quite enjoyable. And at that moment, for the first time, Yeon-jin felt it. The shift in power, the transformation of Dong-eun. She was no longer a weak, helpless girl. She was something much more dangerous. And yet, Yeon-jin still convinced herself that Dong-eun was bluffing. Let's see what you can actually do, she thought. But just as Yeon-jin turned away, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from the 5-person group chat. And the news? Their former high school teacher had died. Not just that the time of death was right after the reunion. A chill ran down Yeon-jin's spine. This wasn't just a coincidence. This was the beginning of Dong-eun's revenge. As it turned out, when Dong-eun transferred to the city elementary school, she made a very deliberate visit. She brought a bouquet of lilies, a seemingly innocent gesture, and with those flowers, she visited her former homeroom teacher, not just to say hello, not just to pay her respects. She had a purpose. She also came to congratulate her senior on his recent academic success. And who was this senior? The homeroom teacher's only son. The moment the teacher saw Dong-eun, his face twisted with rage. He exploded, hurling insults and mockery at her. But what he didn't know, his own son was watching, and in that moment, everything fell into place. The senior realized the truth. Dong-eun had deliberately approached him, not for friendship, not for admiration, for revenge. And then, she revealed the evidence. Dong-eun presented undeniable proof: documents, records, receipts, evidence that his father had accepted bribes to harm students. A scandal that, if exposed, would end his father's career, but even worse, it would ruin his own future. His chances of entering the education department gone, his pride, his aspirations, his legacy shattered. Fear gripped him, and in his desperation to save himself, he did something unthinkable. Using the same lilies that Dong-eun had brought, he brought them home. Why? Because he knew something his father was highly allergic to. The moment his father was exposed to them, his asthma flared up severely. Struggling to breathe, the old man panicked, but instead of helping him, his own son watched. And to make it worse, he returned his father's most prized possession, the watch he cherished. A final taunt. And so, the homeroom teacher met his end at the hands of the son he had raised. When Yeon-jin learned the truth, her hands trembled. This wasn't just revenge. This was something much deeper, much more terrifying. This was Dong-eun's calculated game. Dong-eun was not just some insignificant girl from the lower class. She was a master manipulator, A silent strategist. A threat Yun-jin had never seen coming, and for the first time, she was afraid. She was furious. But most of all, she finally understood who she was dealing with. As she saw her plan progressing smoothly, Dong-eun quickened her pace. She sought out the school nurse, the only person who had once shown her kindness. Through their conversation, Dong-eun uncovered a painful truth. Before she became the target of relentless bullying, there had been another girl, another victim of the same 5 tormentors. Back then, Dong-eun had been too scared to step in. She had been a silent bystander, and when that girl was gone, the cycle continued. The next victim? Dong-eun herself, the school nurse. Understanding Dong-eun's pain, didn't need to offer words of comfort. Instead, she simply said, "Make sure to win." And for the first time, Dong-eun felt truly understood. She made a promise to herself and to the ones who suffered before her. She would win this battle, and she would make sure everyone saw it happen. Later, Dong-eun met with Gun-woo again, another step in their secretive exchanges. This time, the trade was for evidence, proof of Sora's involvement with illicit substances. In return, Dong-eun provided him with shocking information: the location of a body, a girl who had been left in the Seoul hospital morgue for 18 years. Another victim, another life destroyed by them. This revelation sparked something in Gun-woo. He felt that after this cooperation, he would finally be able to turn his life around. Little did he know, he was only sinking deeper into Dong-eun's trap. Meanwhile, Hyunam, Dong-eun's key ally, was keeping close watch, and she discovered something interesting. Yun-jin's husband, Do-young, had been deliberately visiting the Go Club every Friday. Why? He was looking for Dong-eun. At this moment, Dong-eun knew the timing was perfect. She would create a coincidental encounter, a carefully calculated move that would pull Do-young deeper into her plan. And so, this time, Do-young finally met Dong-eun, but nothing about it was accidental. Every step, every move, all part of her plan. Dong-eun already knew what Do-young was thinking. She knew what questions he would ask. She knew how to make him want to know more. And so, the game began. As expected, Do-young initiated the conversation. "It's been a long time," he said. Dong-eun, calm and unreadable, responded simply, "I've been busy with life." Do-young's next question came naturally. "How do you make a living?" And her response? It was enough to shock him. "I live by deceiving men." Her words sent a ripple through Do-young's carefully composed exterior. It was unexpected, intriguing, a mystery he suddenly wanted to unravel. Because which successful man wouldn't be drawn to such a woman? What Do-young didn't realize was, his entire chessboard was already being blocked by Dong-eun, and just like in Go, he had already lost before he even knew he was playing. Dong-eun effortlessly won the game, and as if to challenge fate itself, Do-young doubled the bet for a rematch. At that moment, Dong-eun saw it clearly. He had already fallen into her trap. After the game, Dong-eun left. She made her way to a quiet convenience store and sat down with a rice ball. She didn't have to wait long. Do-young arrived. For a man who usually maintained his distance, he suddenly found himself asking question after question. Even he was surprised by his own curiosity. And as he spoke, his gaze lingered on Dong-eun. Her presence, her demeanor, the aura around her, it was undeniable. And then, in a moment of unconscious realization, Do-young swallowed hard, because for the first time, he felt it. A pull. And Dong-eun? She knew. She had him exactly where she wanted. Do-young realized he had completely fallen into Dong-eun's trap. As a gesture of formality, he handed her his business card and introduced himself. But this was exactly what Dong-eun wanted, a strategy of playing hard to get, drawing her opponent deeper into her web of control. And as if fate had scripted the moment, their unexpected encounter was secretly captured on camera. However, one thing puzzled Dong-eun. Why was the rent for her luxurious apartment unexpectedly lowered? The price seemed far below market value. It didn't make sense. But for now, she put that mystery aside. The most important thing was staying in control of the game. While all this was happening, Yun-jin's main concern was her daughter. She constantly checked on her, making sure she wasn't being mistreated or bullied. But Yi-sol, in her childlike innocence, asked a question that sent chills down Yun-jin's spine. "Why do such strange things happen? Isn't that just hurting others?" Her words echoed something from Dong-eun's past, something she had once asked herself. And for the first time, Yun-jin felt true fear. In an attempt to regain control, she pulled some strings, using her influence to convince the school principal to transfer Dong-eun out. But the principal refused. Not only was Dong-eun highly qualified, but her recommendation letter had come from none other than a board member. There was no way he could fire her. This shook Yun-jin to her core. How on earth had Dong-eun managed to win over someone so powerful? Determined to uncover the truth, she secretly visited her daughter's classroom, hoping to observe the situation firsthand. And then, she saw it. Dong-eun, standing behind Yi-sol, gently resting a pair of scissors on her shoulder. It wasn't a threat, it wasn't an act of harm, but for Yun-jin, who had grown increasingly paranoid, it was a deliberate message, one designed to rattle her nerves. And it worked. Panic-stricken, Yun-jin lost her composure. "Just name your price," she blurted out. "Whatever you want, medical expenses, compensation, emotional damages, just take it." All she wanted was for Dong-eun to disappear, just like she did all those years ago when she was forced to withdraw from school, just like her mother had signed that paper to erase her. But Dong-eun wasn't the same girl anymore. She looked at Yun-jin's disgustingly arrogant expression, that same superiority complex she had always worn like a crown. It sickened her, and so, she played her next card. She slowly revealed the truth about Yi-sol, that the child couldn't distinguish colors. And the implication? It pointed directly at Yun-jin herself. In that moment, Yun-jin understood why Dong-eun was so confident in facing her. She couldn't handle this alone. Out of options, Yun-jin turned to her husband, Do-yeon. She suggested sending their daughter abroad for school, but she underestimated just how much Do-yeon loved Yi-sol. To him, his daughter was irreplaceable, the most precious part of his life, and he couldn't understand why his wife was suddenly so insistent on getting rid of their daughter's new teacher, or why she was going to extreme lengths, using her family's influence, just to replace an elementary school teacher. In the end, Yun-jin had no choice but to drop the idea, afraid that pushing too hard might raise her husband's suspicions. What she didn't know was, this was only the beginning of her nightmare. Meanwhile, Jae-jun received an unexpected package. Inside was Yi-sol's toothbrush. At the same time, Hyun-nam, under Dong-eun's guidance, successfully swapped Hae-jong's phone, and what they discovered inside was gold. Numerous photos of Hae-jong with different men, along with proof that she was preparing for a high-profile wedding with a wealthy man. Dong-eun saw her opportunity. She had found the perfect leverage. She would turn Gunwoo and Hae-jong into her ultimate tools of revenge. But Dong-eun still needed one more thing: money, and she knew exactly where to get it. Her next target? Sara. Among all of them, Sara was the easiest to break. So, when Dong-eun showed up at Sara's place, the woman wasn't surprised at all. Like Yun-jin, she immediately resorted to mockery, belittling Dong-eun's status, but Dong-eun didn't react. Instead, she smirked, her voice laced with a sarcastic edge. She slowly backed Sara into a corner, pressing until she finally said it. She knew about Sara's secret involvement with illegal substances. Sara froze. She hadn't expected Dong-eun to have such damning knowledge about her. And before she could react, Dong-eun tossed a bag onto the floor. "You have 2 weeks," she said. "Fill this bag with cash, and don't bring one. I want US dollars." For the first time, Sara felt powerless. She had never been blackmailed before, and she knew this wouldn't be the last time. That evening, the 5-person group was supposed to have a gathering, but this time, Hae-jong was absent. She was away on a business trip, and, more importantly, her phone was missing. Gunwoo, also missing, and the 3 remaining power figures sat in tense silence. Sara was worried about Dong-eun's demand for money. Jae-jun, for some reason, kept obsessing over Yun-jin's daughter, what school she attended, how she was doing. But Yun-jin? Her mind was completely elsewhere. She was fixated on just one question: what does Dong-eun really want? Each of them sat with their own thoughts. What they didn't realize was, Gunwoo had secretly gone to meet Dong-eun, and this time, she would reveal the identity of So-hee's real killer, because out of the 5 of them, only one person was truly responsible. And as Gunwoo heard the truth, his eyes widened in shock. Shortly after, he booked a one-way ticket abroad, but before disappearing, he made one final move. He called all 4 of them. Each of their reactions were different, but the biggest surprise? Gunwoo also called Do-yeon, and with this final act, he contacted Dong-eun once more. The endgame had begun, and Dong-eun was about to claim her victory. As Dong-eun's revenge neared its climax, she returned to the same park where she used to play Go, the place where she had once met the devoted Yeo-jong. Sitting on a bench, she pulled out her phone and scrolled through the countless messages he had sent her over the years. Not a single one had she ever replied to. And now, before everything was over, she wanted to say goodbye properly, so she sent him a message. Yeo-jong came running. In his heart, he believed that this time, finally, the cold and distant Dong-eun had been moved by his sincerity. But he was wrong. She had called him here to say goodbye. Yeo-jong, no longer able to hide his feelings, took this chance to confess his love. For the first time, Dong-eun felt something warm in her chest. For someone who had walked through nothing but darkness, she had never truly experienced love like this. And in that moment, she smiled. A genuine, heartfelt smile. For the first time, she felt alive. A person, not just a tool of revenge. Then, looking into his eyes, she finally spoke from her heart. "I don't need a prince, I need a partner who will fight alongside me." Yeo-jong was stunned. Her words shook him to his core. And in that moment, his entire perspective changed. This wasn't just about love. This was about purpose. So, in pursuit of a different life, and to stand beside the woman he loved. Yeo-jong, the son of a prestigious hospital director, decided to leave everything behind. With his mother's blessing, he left his career and moved to Semyong City to open his first ever clinic. But while Yeo-jong chose to move forward, Yoon-jin was unraveling, unable to sleep, unable to shake off the suffocating pressure. Yoon-jin grasped at straws, believing she could still cleanse herself of misfortune. But her mother knew better. If Yoon-jin truly wanted to survive, there was only one way: destroy Dong-eun completely, take her down professionally. So, with her mother's connections, Yoon-jin reached out to an old friend, the corrupt police officer who had once helped her cover up a scandal. But while Yoon-jin plotted in the shadows, Dong-eun had hit a roadblock. Gun-woo had vanished. Ever since he made those last phone calls, he had disappeared without a trace. Even Hyun-nam, always level-headed, found it suspicious. "Dong-eun, you didn't kill him, did you?" She choked. But Dong-eun wasn't stupid. Revenge was not about getting blood on her own hands. It was about breaking people one by one, using their own weaknesses against them. And right now, the biggest proof of this? Jae-jun's paranoia. Because who else would have the audacity to break into his home and search through his things? Gun-woo. And now, he was gone, while Dong-eun worked in the shadows. Yoon-jin was on edge, terrified that her darkest secrets would soon be exposed to the world. But in public, she still held her head high, even when a colleague sneered at her, mocking that she couldn't even write her own scripts. "How can you even call yourself a real weather anchor?" Yoon-jin fired back without hesitation. "My husband's ads pay every single person's salary at this station, so don't think for a second that being young is enough to make you valuable." Her words were sharp, her pride still unshaken, but deep down, she was falling apart. With Gun-woo missing, she had become paranoid. She started cleaning her shoes every single day, a nervous habit she couldn't seem to shake. Meanwhile, Dong-eun had her own problem. Gun-woo's sudden disappearance had left a hole in her plans. And worse, she was being followed. She knew exactly who was behind it, so she did the unexpected. She let them follow her, even staged a minor accident. And when she played the victim and accepted the apology compensation, she used it as a chance to uncover who had sent them. But there was one person Dong-eun couldn't bear to hurt: Hyun-nam, the kindest person in this entire mess. Even though they were co-conspirators in revenge, Dong-eun never wanted her to sink too deep. She knew how dark this road was. She knew what it would do to a person. So, when she went alone to get her car repaired, she wasn't expecting a trigger from the past. The moment she heard the sizzling sound of meat grilling, her entire body froze. The sound, the smell, it was the exact same as that day. The day she had been branded, scarred, burned. A pain so deep, so searing, that it had never truly left her. It rushed back into her mind, filling every corner of her memory. And for the first time in years, she felt trapped in her own nightmare. But then, at that very moment, her phone buzzed. A message from Yeo-jong. "I've made my decision. I'm following you." And just like that, the darkness pulled back, and Dong-eun had a choice to make. Nowhere else to go. She chose to go to him. When Yeo-jong saw her, he was shocked. She looked exhausted, hollow, like a woman on the edge of breaking. For the first time, Dong-eun opened up completely. She told him everything, every dark, twisted moment of her past. And as she spoke, she waited for him to walk away, to abandon her once he realized how broken she truly was. "This road only leads to destruction," she warned him. "I can't lose, I can't stop, and when it's over, there will be nothing left of me." But Yeo-jong didn't run. Instead, he did the one thing she never expected. He asked her, "Have you ever thought about letting go? What happens when revenge is over? What will be left?" At first, Dong-eun laughed. "You've lived a sheltered life, haven't you?" Then, she pulled up her sleeve, revealing the scars that covered her arm. Yeo-jong's breath caught in his throat. "That's just one arm," she said. "Imagine if it was my entire body." would you still ask me to let go? Then she stood, stepping into the light, and removed her coat. Yeo-jong froze. His hands trembled, because now, he saw the full extent of her pain, and in that moment, he knew this wasn't just her revenge anymore, it was theirs, and together, they would see it through. Just like that, Yeo-jong officially joined Dong-eun's crusade for revenge, but what Dong-eun didn't know was that behind Yeo-jong's gentle and innocent facade, he, too, was consumed by hatred. Once, he had a happy life. His family had been renowned doctors for generations, devoted to the principle of saving lives, until the day his father saved the wrong man, a man who, after recovering from surgery, murdered his father with the very scalpel that had saved his life. It was a betrayal so cruel, it shook the entire nation in outrage. But for Yeo-jong, it was more than a news headline, it was the beginning of his suffering. For years, he was haunted by the unresolved pain. Until he met Dong-eun, she became his calm in the storm, but after she vanished, he found himself spiraling once again. To soothe his nerves, he listened to the sound of dissolving effervescent tablets, a habit he had formed to keep himself from breaking down. Because the monster who killed his father? He never repented. Even from behind bars, he wrote Yeo-jong letters, taunting him, laughing at his pain. So Yeo-jong's grief turned to rage, and that rage turned into an obsession with revenge. When his mother finally uncovered the truth, she realized her son had been silently suffering under an unbearable weight. His hatred ran as deep as Dong-eun's, and it was this very hatred that made him the perfect ally. Now, he wasn't just helping Dong-eun, he was fighting his own battle alongside her. Meanwhile, Do-young, once untouched by scandal, received an unexpected package. Inside were photos, images of him and Dong-eun's encounters. It was clear, Gun-woo had sent them, but with Gun-woo now missing, there was only one other person to confront, his boss, Jae-joon. Even Jae-joon, usually composed, found himself curious. Why would a man like Do-young suddenly be looking for someone like Gun-woo? Then, something caught Do-young's eye. The cigarette in Jae-joon's hand. It was the exact same brand his wife, Yeon-jin, smoked. Coincidence? Or something more? For a moment, the two men locked eyes, neither willing to speak first, both too proud to show their cards. And so, their meeting ended in silence. That night, Haejong also received a package. Inside, dozens of photos, images of her with various men, a stark reminder that her secrets were never truly safe. At the same time, Jae-joon sat alone, staring at a toothbrush, a seemingly ordinary item, but one that held the answer he had been searching for. And yet, when he called Yeon-jin, she refused to answer. She was avoiding him. Why? Because she knew exactly what he was about to find out. Later that night, Do-young flipped through Yeon-jin's old high school yearbook, but before he could go further, Yeon-jin walked in. "Why are you suddenly interested in my high school friends?" She smiled, but there was a hint of unease in her voice. And then, Do-young asked something unexpected. "Why isn't Gun-woo in here?" The question shook her. Her eyes flickered with panic. "Why would you even ask about him? Did he threaten you?" Do-young leaned back, studying her reaction. "Funny," he said. "Every time someone brings up Gun-woo, you and your friends assume it's about blackmail." That was enough for him. He didn't press further, just left her with a parting remark. "Be careful when you drive." Then, he walked away. But Yeon-jin wasn't stupid. The moment he left, she checked his car's GPS history, and when she saw the destination, Jae-joon's golf course, she was terrified. Do-young and Jae-joon? They had never interacted before, so why now? She had no idea, and she hated not knowing, so she decided to ask Jae-joon herself. But when she got to his house, he was gone. Jae-joon, instead of waiting for Yeon-jin, went to see their daughter, because before this moment, he had suspicions. But now, thanks to the DNA test from Yesol's toothbrush, he knew the truth. Yesol was his daughter, and when he saw her hesitate at a crosswalk, it hit him all at once. She had inherited his condition. She, too, struggled to distinguish colors. At that moment, Jae-joon couldn't hold back anymore. He ran to her, held her tight, and whispered, "From now on, I'll protect you," determined to win back his daughter. Jae-joon turned to his lawyer friend for advice, but the law was clear. Unless he had a legitimate reason, even as Yesol's biological father, he had no claim to custody. And just like that, his target shifted. When Jae-joon finally confronted Yeon-jin, there was no more pretense. He wasn't here to play games, he wanted answers. Why did you let another man raise my daughter? I hate when people take what's mine. His words were laced with venom. Before Yeonjin could react, he grabbed her, crushing his lips against hers. She didn't pull away, but even she wasn't sure why. Because deep down, Yeonjin didn't even know who she truly loved. Maybe, in the end, she only ever loved herself. Do-young had always been a man of logic, but that day at his daughter's school sports event, something caught his attention. Yi-sol couldn't tell colors apart. It was subtle, just a small hesitation, but for Do-young, it was a red flag. Still, he didn't react. He pushed the thought aside, pretending not to notice. Instead, he changed the subject, asking Yi-sol about her new homeroom teacher. What she said next made his stomach drop. Mom doesn't like my teacher, but she's one of Mom's best friends. Best friends? That was all Do-young needed to hear. Something wasn't right, so when it was time for the parents' meeting, he made sure to attend, and that's when he saw him, Jae-joon, uninvited, unannounced, standing there like he belonged. The tension was instant. Do-young's eyes narrowed. What are you doing here? But Jae-joon, ever the provocateur, smirked. I'm here to see my kid. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. And then, as if it was nothing, he laughed. Relax. I'm joking. But Do-young wasn't laughing, because he wasn't stupid. Something was off, he could feel it. And when Jae-joon finally revealed the truth, it hit him like a freight train. I came to see an old classmate. You know her. She's your daughter's homeroom teacher, Dong-eun. Do-young felt a cold chill run down his spine. This couldn't be a coincidence. The woman he had been drawn to was now teaching his daughter, and was connected to both Jae-joon and Yeonjin. It was too perfect, too calculated. And as Jae-joon continued to taunt him, one thing became painfully clear. He wasn't just talking about Dong-eun, he was talking about Yeonjin, about Yi-sol. Even after the meeting ended, Jae-joon's eyes never left Yi-sol. He watched her, studied her, and when Do-young looked back, there he was again, Jae-joon, still staring. That was the last straw. Do-young stormed over, ready to put an end to this game. Stay away from my daughter. But Jae-joon just smiled. You're not a very funny guy, are you? How'd you end up with such a funny, charming daughter? Do-young's blood boiled. The taunting, the smugness. But with Yi-sol right there, he held back. Neither man was willing to throw the first punch. But before walking away, Jae-joon left him with one final clue. A hint so obvious. Even Do-young, brilliant as he was, couldn't ignore it anymore. And in that moment, he understood everything. But Jae-joon had his own mission. He had come to warn Dong-eun, if you're planning anything against Yi-sol, stop now. But what he didn't expect was that she already knew, because the DNA test he used to confirm Yi-sol was his. It was Dong-eun who had sent him that toothbrush, and then she turned the tables. If you want to claim your daughter, stop helping Yeonjin, otherwise, you'll never win custody. For the first time in years, Jae-joon felt fear. Dong-eun had become a force beyond his control. He reached out for a handshake, but Dong-eun? She didn't shake hands with people like him. We're not friends, Jae-joon. We're just useful to each other. Then, she dropped the final bombshell. Yi-sol sees the world the same way you do. And just like that, Jae-joon was shaken to his core. That night, Yi-sol told Yeonjin everything. Mom, Dad and Uncle Jae-joon came to my school today. It was so fun. Her innocent excitement was like a dagger to Yeonjin's heart. Furious, she snapped. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Yi-sol's eyes welled up. I did, Mom. During dinner, you just didn't listen. Yeonjin froze. For the first time, she felt something close to guilt. But guilt wouldn't save her now, because she knew the storm was coming. Do-young had had enough. If he wanted answers, he needed to go straight to the weakest link, and that was Hae-jong, the gold digger, the woman who always had a price. And Do-young? He was willing to pay it. All it took was one luxury handbag. And Hae-jong told him everything. The truth about Yeonjin, about the bullying, and most importantly, about Dong-eun, his daughter's teacher. The woman he had been drawn to from the start was the very girl his wife had tormented for years. It was a revelation that changed everything. But Hae-jong wasn't just betraying Yeonjin. She had her own fears. She had climbed her way up, finally securing a wealthy fiancé. But her future mother-in-law was hard to please. And who did that woman adore? Not Hae-jong, but Dong-eun, the one person who could destroy everything. Desperate, she begged Dong-eun, please, don't tell her, I'll do anything. But Dong-eun saw through her, the crocodile tears, the fake apologies, so she ripped Hae-jong's mask off. And when Hae-jong finally snapped, screaming insults at her. Dong-eun just smiled, because now, she had another pawn under her control. She handed Hae-jong her lost phone, the one filled with secrets. From now on, you work for me. First job? Tell Do-young the truth. Second job? Report Gunwoo missing. And just like that, the final pieces of her revenge fell into place. Gunwoo's disappearance sent a shockwave through the group. The police immediately went after his employer Jae-jun, and when Jae-jun brought the news to the rest of them, the first to panic was none other than Sora. Her biggest fear wasn't losing a friend, it was the fact that Gunwoo had been her main supplier for years. If the police started digging, they'd find a lot more than just a missing person case. And when Hae-jong was confronted, she had no choice but to confess, which earned her a violent outburst from Sora. The cracks within the group were spreading. Paranoia, mistrust, betrayal. What was once an unbreakable alliance was falling apart. Meanwhile, Hyun-nam, ever the watchful observer, had uncovered something chilling. She had been tracking Yeon-jin's mother, following her to a mysterious shrine. And what she found? Young, beautiful followers, all manipulated into believing that being with older, influential men would bring them fortune and success. And then there it was, a familiar handbag, the same expensive bag that had been spotted in the hotel room of the corrupt cop who had been helping Yeon-jin. The connection was undeniable. Yeon-jin's mother had built her empire of influence through deals, favors, and secrets. And now, Yeon-jin had just received a game-changing piece of information. They had found Dong-eun's mother, a new pawn, a new weapon, and Yeon-jin had every intention of using her. But while Yeon-jin was plotting, her husband was slipping away, disillusioned, disgusted. And then, a stranger approached him, Yeo-jong. A few rounds of go later, and Do-young had noticed something odd. This man played like Dong-eun, too precise, too controlled. It wasn't a coincidence. Yeo-jong wasn't just any opponent, he was testing him, seeing if Do-young had started to doubt. And he had. This was all part of the plan. Step by step, Dong-eun and Yeo-jong were isolating Yeon-jin until she had nowhere left to run, and she felt it, the walls closing in. She tried to control the narrative. She warned Do-young some secrets were meant to stay buried. Once you open Pandora's box, you won't be able to close it again. She was desperate, desperate to keep her perfect life, her perfect image, her perfect marriage. But Do-young? He had already made up his mind. He needed the truth, and there was only one person who would give it to him. Do-young found her, Dong-eun, and she didn't hold back. You think this was fate? That we just happened to meet? No, Do-young, I spent years planning this. Everything I've done, it's all been for revenge. She looked him in the eye. But don't get me wrong, I don't hurt innocent people. I only go after those who deserve it. And then, she gave him the final piece of the puzzle. You want to know the whole truth? Go to my apartment. See it for yourself. At the exact same time, Yeon-jin had finally tracked down Dong-eun's address, and when she realized where it was, her entire body went cold. It was right across from her own house. Dong-eun had been watching her every single day for years. She had never been safe. She had never been in control, and for the first time in her life, Yeon-jin felt fear, but she refused to show it. She paid a team to break in. Security cameras? She didn't care. She needed to prove a point. This is my world. She doesn't belong in it. But when she stepped inside, her smirk vanished, because on the walls were photos, files, notes, timelines, everything. Years and years of history, her entire past, exposed, her every move, documented, her secrets, staring her right in the face. And then, footsteps. She turned, and standing there, in the doorway, was Do-young. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She had thought she could control this. She had thought she could bury the past. But now, she had unlocked Pandora's box herself, because her husband had seen everything. Do-young exhaled slowly, scanning the room. Then, with an almost eerie calm, he spoke. You know, Yeon-jin, I've been wondering something. What exactly did you do to her? To make someone spend over a decade planning this? Yeon-jin's blood ran cold. This was not the man she married. This was a man who saw her for who she really was. And for the first time in her life, she realized she might actually lose. Do-young finally confronted his wife. Tell me the truth. Yeon-jin, did you ever hurt anyone? Did you ever bully someone? Yeon-jin scoffed, rolling her eyes. That's just Dong-eun's story. She's exaggerating. We just didn't get along. That's all. But Do-young wasn't buying it. For the first time, he saw his wife for what she really was. A woman so twisted, so shameless that she could actually paint herself as the victim. She wasn't apologetic. She wasn't remorseful. And that arrogance, that entitlement, it made Do-young feel sick. The perfect wife he had once admired, she was gone. In fact, he wondered if she had ever existed. His anger grew, but something else caught his eye. A photo on the wall. A picture of his daughter, Yi-sol, with Jae-joon. And in that moment, he knew. Dong-eun had been watching everything. Every move inside that room. Every word exchanged. It was all going exactly as she planned. But there was one thing she hadn't expected. Do-young, despite his cold rage, was still a man of discipline, unlike his wife, who had stormed in, breaking into a private residence. Do-young had respectfully taken off his shoes before entering, a stark contrast to the arrogance of Yeon-jin, and that gave Dong-eun an idea. She wasn't done breaking Yeon-jin yet, so she met her again, and this time, she offered her a chance to repent. But did Yeon-jin take it? Of course not. She laughed in Dong-eun's face. Even when shown security footage of her breaking into Dong-eun's home, she didn't flinch. So what? She smirked. Do you think this is going to ruin me? I have 1,000 ways to get out of this. This is nothing. But then, Dong-eun pulled out a police report, filed 18 years ago, documenting every single injury Dong-eun had suffered, the medical records, the bruises, the statements, all of it. And for the first time, Yeon-jin snapped. Her mask of confidence cracked. She lunged forward, snarling, "If you dare release that, I will make you suffer. I will ruin you." There was no regret in her voice, no remorse in her eyes, only pure, venomous hatred. And in that moment, Dong-eun knew Yeon-jin would never change. So there was only one thing left to do. She had to make her feel every second of the 18 years of hell she had endured. Meanwhile, Do-young couldn't shake the image of that photo, Yi-sol, and Jae-joon. Then he remembered something. A comment Jae-joon had once made. "I had a daughter once, but someone took her away from me." The puzzle pieces clicked into place, and for the first time in his life, Do-young felt pure, unfiltered rage. And then, another blow. His secretary rushed in with urgent news. Gun-woo has disappeared. The police had traced his calls, and now they wanted to question his employer, Jae-joon. But when Jae-joon was interrogated, he deflected. He pointed the police toward Do-young instead. Why? Because Jae-joon had one goal. He wanted Do-young to start digging into Yeon-jin's past. He wanted Do-young to see the monster he had married. Because if he could destroy her, he could take back his daughter. But Do-young? He wasn't one to act on impulse. Even when his secretary handed him a USB drive, filled with Gun-woo's final messages. Even when the contents made his stomach turn, he didn't react. Instead, he threw the drive away, and he went home. But when he walked into his closet, something felt wrong, and then, he saw it. A closet filled with luxury shopping bags, from Jae-joon's store, one after another, blue packaging, dozens of them. And suddenly, everything made sense. The late nights, the unexplained gifts, the familiar scent of Jae-joon's cologne, his daughter's face. And it hit him. He was the fool, the laughingstock. His wife had never truly loved him, and his daughter, she wasn't even his. While Do-young was reeling from the truth, Yeon-jin was frantically scheming, trying to regain control. She and her so-called friends huddled together, desperate, anxious. But then, Sora snapped. She had been quiet until now, but with Gun-woo missing, she lost it. If the police start digging, they'll find everything, she screamed, because if Gun-woo was found, he could lead them straight to her, to the contraband and the deals, and then her life would be over. But Yeon-jin? She didn't care. She was focused on one thing and one thing only, stopping Dong-eun. "We need to work together," she told them. But Sara just laughed bitterly. "That's easy for you to say. Your whole career is built on public image. If your scandal gets out, you're finished. But us? We're not famous. We don't care." It was a brutal realization. Their friendship had never been real. And now, as the walls closed in, the only thing left to do was turn on each other. And then, the final blow. Sara brought up a name, one they hadn't spoken in years. Gun-woo mentioned So-hee before he disappeared. The room went silent. Yeon-jin froze, because she knew, if they were talking about So-hee now, it meant everything was about to come crashing down. Years ago, a single moment of vanity set a tragic chain of events into motion. So-hee had accidentally worn the same dress as Yeon-jin, and to someone like Yeon-jin, arrogant, entitled, and obsessed with status, this was unacceptable. How could someone she deemed beneath her dare to wear the same thing? Sara and Haejong joined in, mocking So-hee, fueling Yeonjin's fury. So Yeonjin did what she always did. She used her power to humiliate and control. She demanded that So-hee take it off immediately, but So-hee refused. She ran, and at that moment, she became Yeonjin's new favorite target. Now, years later, as her so-called friends turned against her, the question finally surfaced. Yeonjin, you were the last one to see So-hee that night. Did you do it? Yeonjin's face remained cold as she confidently responded. I was with Jae-jun that night. I wasn't even there. But Jae-jun? He froze, because he knew that was a lie. And Yeonjin knew it, too, because only she remembered where she really was that night. That night, Yeonjin had sent So-hee a message, demanding she meet her on the rooftop. Her demand: throw away the dress. Get rid of it right now, or I'll make your life a living hell. But this time, something unexpected happened. For the first time, So-hee wasn't afraid. She stood her ground, and worse, she laughed. You think I'm scared of you? Yeonjin, you're the real pathetic one here. It was the first and last time anyone had ever dared to humiliate Yeonjin, and it made her snap. She pulled out a lighter and set fire to So-hee's sweater. The flames spread instantly. So-hee screamed for help, her hands reaching out toward Yeonjin, and for a moment, Yeonjin hesitated. But then, she pushed her away. So-hee stumbled backward, her hands grasped at Yeonjin's name tag, and then, she fell over the edge. Her body crashed onto the pavement below, and just like that, she was gone. Yeonjin stood there, frozen in horror. She looked down at her hands, still trembling. The Yeonjin name tag that So-hee had ripped off lay next to her feet. And then, panic set in. She grabbed her phone, and she called her mother. The mother called the corrupt cop, Young-jun, to handle the situation, but what they didn't expect was that there would be a witness at the scene. That witness was Dong-eun, who had been forced to drop out of school. She just happened to hear the commotion. When the police arrived, Dong-eun found Yeonjin's name tag on the ground. Dong-eun, uneasy and hoping to bring the truth to light, thought that if she quietly reported it to the police, she would finally get justice for the wrongs done to her. But little did she know, the report was intercepted by the corrupt cop Young-jun, who then handed the only piece of evidence that could point to Yeonjin directly to Yeonjin's mother. Instead of destroying the name tag as she should have, Yeonjin's mother secretly kept it, without even informing Yeonjin herself. Meanwhile, the others grew more curious about what Gunwoo had said about Yeonjin and So-hee before he disappeared. Seeing the suspicious looks from everyone, Yeonjin knew that her friends were no longer trustworthy. The false friendship was shattered. Feeling something was terribly wrong, Yeonjin immediately contacted Young-jun, the corrupt cop who had handled things for her years ago. She feared the person who had reported So-hee's case might resurface, but Young-jun reassured her, telling her not to worry too much. After all, he had taken care of everything back then. He had disposed of So-hee's body, leaving it to rot in the morgue. Now nothing was left but bones. Moreover, the mysterious witness had never appeared again, so there was nothing to fear. After hearing this, Yeonjin felt relieved, unaware that So-hee's body had been moved to a freezer by the school's principal. The principal, unwilling to let a grieving mother be deprived of the truth about her child's death, secretly moved the body to the freezer to preserve the evidence. Unfortunately, the principal was killed by one of the criminals he had once helped, and Yeo-jong was the principal's son. With the help of this principal's son, Dong-eun gained a powerful ally, and Yeo-jong became her strongest aid in seeking revenge. Afterward, Yeo-jong learned from the hospital director's mother that So-hee had been pregnant previously. Dong-eun shared the shocking news with the former school doctor, a revelation that added another layer of tragedy to the case. So-hee's unjust death became the driving force for Dong-eun's survival, as she vowed to bring justice not only for herself but also for So-hee. Before Gunwoo went missing, he intentionally dropped hints about Yeonjin's involvement in So-hee's death. The crucial detail was that, as of now, there was no hard evidence to prove Yeonjin had killed So-hee. To get to the truth, Gunwoo contacted several people and mentioned So-hee's name. His final meeting was with Yeonjin, to get her to reveal something. Gunwoo intentionally recorded their conversation, but Yeonjin caught on and smashed his phone. Then, she turned to Gunwoo and warned him that if he was planning to blackmail her, he'd better choose a matter that would truly scare her. Gunwoo knew exactly what kind of person Yeonjin was, so he boldly told her that he knew she had killed So-hee. He emphasized that the only piece of evidence was in his pocket, and whether she believed him or not was up to her. If she didn't act fast, he would go public with this information, exposing her crime on national television. Fearing that Gunwoo might be the one who had reported her years ago, Jin frantically searched through his pockets but only found a piece of gum. From her nervous reaction, Gunwoo confirmed that Jin was indeed the killer. Seizing the moment, he demanded 10 billion won in cash, or if Jin was willing to get intimate with him, he'd consider lowering the amount. But Jin, enraged by this insulting offer, grabbed a bottle and smashed it over Gunwoo's head, knocking him down and violently beating him until his head was a bloody mess. Gunwoo tried to fight back, but before he could react, Jin hit him with another bottle, knocking him to the ground, where he lay motionless, as he struggled and tried to grab hold of her, even tearing a piece of flesh from her. Gunwoo eventually passed out. Jin, now realizing what she had done, looked at the blood on her dress and quickly changed into a coat. She then called Jun. Jun immediately arranged for people to quickly dispose of Gunwoo's body, wrapping it up and throwing his phone into the river. He then instructed them to take the body to an abandoned crematorium. Meanwhile, as Jin burned her blood-stained clothes, she looked at her feet and realized that Gunwoo had scratched her before he died. She quickly called Jun to ensure that all traces of evidence on his body were erased. Jun assured her that it would be handled, but secretly instructed his people to preserve the evidence, even vacuum sealing the body and storing it in the morgue. Why? Because it would be his biggest retirement payoff. Unaware of this, Jin would eventually come to realize that no one in this scheme was truly trustworthy. On the other side, Dong-eun realized that the small room where she had been hiding the photos was no longer safe. So she gathered all the pictures, but as she was about to leave, she noticed something missing. She frantically searched and found that the missing photo had been taken by Jin. The person in the photo was none other than Hyunam's abusive husband. Following this lead, Jin tracked down Hyunam. When she confronted Hyunam, she immediately pointed out that the reason Dong-eun was able to track them all was because Hyunam had been helping her secretly. Hyunam had made a pact with Dong-eun, so she wasn't about to betray her. Jin had expected this, so she threatened Hyunam's daughter, forcing her to betray Dong-eun. Hyunam immediately begged for mercy. Jin then grabbed Hyunam's bag and rifled through its contents. Jin is trying to get Hyunam's phone number, only to realize that Hyunam already has hers saved. With things escalating to this point, Jin decides it's time to teach Hyunam a lesson, showing her that she's not someone to be messed with. In terms of intelligence, Jin is no less sharp than Dong-eun, so she smugly offers Hyunam a deal if she secretly switches sides to help Jin. She'll have Hyunam's husband killed, and even take care of him quicker than Dong-eun could. But all Hyunam feels from this ugly offer is malice and cruelty. Deep down, she despises Jin. Before Jin even approached her, Hyunam had already been warned by Dong-eun that Jin might be targeting her. Sure enough, just as expected, Hyunam pretends to ally herself with Jin, but in reality, she's doing it to get closer and help Dong-eun execute her plan. For the safety of her daughter, Hyunam hands her over to Dong-eun. Dong-eun moves quickly, sending Hyunam's daughter abroad to study and staying with the school nurse for safety. Just when they think they've secured everything, Jin strikes back. She orders her people to lend money to Hyunam's husband, encouraging him to gamble. If Hyunam doesn't answer his calls, the casino will ensure he loses everything. Then he'll return home and take out his frustration by beating Hyunam. And when it comes to dealing with Dong-eun, Jin is even more vicious. She finds Dong-eun's long-lost biological mother, gives her a huge sum of money, and tells her Dong-eun's address and workplace, instructing her to harass Dong-eun. When Dong-eun sees her mentally unstable mother, she realizes that Jin has found a new weapon to use against her. But Dong-eun won't fall easily. Just like Hyunam, despite enduring daily abuse from her husband, she still manages to pass along vital information to Dong-eun, while keeping tabs on Jin's associates. She discovers a shady cop, Jun, who works for Jin. Recently, he's been frequenting a long-abandoned crematorium. More alarmingly, the crematorium has been out of business for years, yet the power meter is still running. This suggests that Jun may be up to something highly illegal there. Dong-eun, with Yeojon's help, investigates further and uncovers that the crematorium's electric bill has been active since the day Gunwoo disappeared. They deduce that Gunwoo's body might be stored there. Jun, it seems, hasn't disposed of the body because he plans to use it to blackmail Jin. To confirm this, Dong-eun buys the crematorium and enters as the new owner. It doesn't take long to verify their suspicions. Sure enough, Gunwoo's body is vacuum sealed in cold storage. When confronted with this damning evidence, the caretaker admits he's been following Jun's orders. At this point, Yeo-jong seizes the opportunity to threaten him, offering him double his pay in exchange for his help in covering up their actions to deceive Young-jun. Dong-eun and Yeo-jong hypothesize that Young-jun has kept Gun-woo's body because it contains evidence that will link Young-jin to the murder. Now, they just need to gather evidence from Young-jin herself and match her scars to the DNA on Gun-woo's body to prove she's the killer. To carry out their plan, Dong-eun decides to set a trap. She targets Young-jin's weakest link, Hae-jong. Previously, Dong-eun used Hae-jong to expose Gun-woo's disappearance. Now, she needs Hae-jong again to lure Young-jin into their game. The best plan is for Hae-jong to visit Young-jin's cosmetic surgery clinic under the pretext of getting treatment, creating a situation where Young-jin feels safe and drops her guard. Hae-jong, in turn, uses the opportunity of receiving a gift from Young-jin's husband to ask about Young-jin's past, subtly revealing that Young-jin's husband, Do-yeon, has known Dong-eun for a long time and that they even play chess together. Upon hearing this, Young-jin's face shows a flicker of disbelief, but inside, she's already formulating a plan. In an effort to maintain her dignity, she casually chats with the handsome Yeo-jong. Yeo-jong, however, picks up on a subtle hint Young-jin's cosmetic work is good, but requires constant maintenance. Dong-eun has planted a seed of suspicion in Young-jin's mind. So, when Young-jin returns home, furious to find her husband becoming increasingly cold toward her, she decides to strike first. She tells him, "If you want to know about my past, I'll tell you myself. Why go to that gold digger Hae-jong?" Do-yeon, already seething with anger, retaliates. "Why ask Hae-jong, or Sara, who's into illegal substances, or Jae-jun, that jerk, or Gun-woo, who's disappeared?" Young-jin doesn't understand and asks, "Are you going to side with them against me?" Those words hit Do-yeon like a punch. He's been silently enduring, trying to save their marriage, to salvage their family, but seeing Young-jin's unrepentant, self-righteous attitude sickens him. His cryptic words leave Young-jin stunned, as she realizes that she's never considered her own faults, blaming everything on Dong-eun. She convinces herself that if she were more beautiful, maybe her husband wouldn't have fallen for someone like Dong-eun. So, she decides to visit Yeo-jong for a cosmetic procedure, hoping to use her beauty to hold onto her fragile marriage. Unbeknownst to her, at that very moment, Dong-eun is meeting with Do-yeon. Dong-eun is about to reveal the full extent of her past suffering to him, when she removes her jacket, revealing her scarred arms. Everyone in the room is shocked, especially Do-yeon. How cruel must a person be to torture another to this extent? Meanwhile, Young-jin, as she's being sedated for her procedure, here's a question from Yeo-jong.
Son Myung-ho, what did you do to him?
She senses something is wrong but is unable to react before the anesthesia takes hold. While she's unconscious, Yeo-jong quietly gathers evidence, ultimately discovering the proof that Young-jin murdered Gun-woo. When Young-jin wakes up, she has a nagging feeling that she might have just confessed to her crime. In a fit of panic, she frantically demands to know if the consultation room is equipped with surveillance cameras, but the staff calmly assures her that due to patient privacy, there's no way they could install such equipment. Terrified, Young-jin rushes home. Her hands tremble as she quickly strips off her jacket, checking her body for any hidden listening devices or tracking implants. Only when she finds nothing does she finally let out a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Dong-eun has been talking to Do-yeon for quite a while. She was certain that the thing she'd revealed would be enough to make him leave Young-jin, but to her surprise, Do-yeon is more patient than she expected. Even knowing that Young-jin bullied classmates and had secret affairs, nothing seems to faze him. Do-yeon calmly admits that after being married for over 10 years, all he can do now is tolerate her to the maximum. He's a powerful businessman, and if he were to divorce, it wouldn't just affect his company's stock price, he'd have to consider the feelings of his beloved daughter. Yi-sol. Dong-eun didn't expect Do-yeon to be this understanding, but she's confident that as her revenge moves forward, Do-yeon will eventually grow disgusted by Young-jin's true nature. Meanwhile, Young-jin is still wreaking havoc, throwing tantrums and testing Do-yeon's patience. She even accuses him of having an emotional affair with Dong-eun. Her words strike a nerve, but Do-yeon doesn't react. He refuses to acknowledge this accusation.
I'm not asking about you and Jae-jun, am I?
Which only makes Young-jin more furious. Determined to take revenge on Dong-eun, Young-jin sets her sights on Hae-nam. She tries to dig for useful information, hoping to use Hae-nam to her advantage. By chance, Young-jin catches Hae-nam as she's about to leave, and notices that Hae-nam is enrolling her daughter out of school. Young-jin quickly guesses that Hae-nam has already sent her daughter away, but Young-jin won't let her off that easily. She warns that, even if Hae-nam's daughter is on a plane, She has connections in the airline industry, she'll find her no matter what. Unbeknownst to her, today is the day Hyun-nam's daughter is actually leaving. Hyun-nam, barely holding back her tears, falls to her knees, begging Yeon-jin not to hurt her daughter. She promises to do anything to protect her. Thinking she's won, Yeon-jin leaves satisfied, but she isn't done with Hyun-nam. Instead, she plans to bring Hyun-nam's abusive husband back into the picture to continue tormenting her. Despite everything, Hyun-nam remains silent, refusing to tell her husband where her daughter is. She knows her daughter is safe abroad, and she's willing to endure any pain to keep her that way. After enduring a brutal beating, Hyun-nam finally receives the news that her daughter has arrived safely overseas. Relieved, Hyun-nam can now finally take action. She pretends to hide some money in front of her husband, which he quickly discovers. Confused, he asks where it came from, and Hyun-nam simply replies that it was given to her by a lady. That lady? Yeon-jin's mother. Her husband, sensing a golden opportunity, immediately texts Yeon-jin's mother, Yeon-ae, saying, "I know you killed someone." When Yeon-ae sees the message, she turns pale, immediately leaving in a panic. It turns out, not long ago, Yeon-ae had arranged for an insider to watch over So-hee's body. That insider had just found out that So-hee's body wasn't in the morgue but had been moved to a cold storage facility years ago by the former hospital director. The body is still preserved, and all evidence remains intact. Yeon-ae is shaken to her core, realizing that the person who's been blackmailing her might be the one who reported the murder years ago. But all of this is part of Dong-eun's carefully laid plan. She immediately contacts Young-jun, instructing him to handle the situation. Meanwhile, Young-jun, already driven to the edge by Yeon-ae's erratic behavior, is more determined than ever to use the body as leverage. He uses his connections to have a colleague at Seoul State Hospital warn the current director, who happens to be A-jeon's mother, to handle the situation legally. But A-jeon's mother is unmoved. She declares that she won't move the body back to the morgue until the truth is uncovered. Back at school, Dong-eun is dealing with a teacher who's been making her life difficult. Curious about his intentions, she investigates and soon discovers that this teacher is a creepy predator who secretly takes photos of young girls. Dong-eun sends these photos to Jae-jun, hoping he'll understand the severity of the situation. After all, this teacher has been taking pictures of Yi-sol, Jae-jun's own daughter. Jae-jun, enraged, storms into the school and beats the teacher senseless without saying a word. But, unfortunately, Yi-sol witnesses the entire thing. Horrified, Jae-jun is caught off guard by the sight of his daughter seeing him lash out like that. Luckily, Dong-eun quickly shields Yi-sol from the scene. Her goal is to punish these monsters, not to traumatize an innocent child. Soon after, Do-young receives a call from his daughter and rushes to the police station to handle the situation. Jae-jun, initially refusing to settle, is forced to back down when Do-young's legal team intervenes. Angry, Jae-jun argues with Do-young, and before long, the two are in a physical confrontation. The fight ignites Do-young's rage. He's put up with so much, but this latest insult is just too much. After a fierce battle, Do-young emerges victorious, and orders that his daughter be sent to her mother's house for safety. Yeon-jin, oblivious to the entire situation, demands to know why Do-young is acting this way. Do-young, still trying to give her face, ignores her, but Yeon-jin's persistence pushes him to his breaking point. Finally, Do-young erupts. Your affair partner went to school today and told everyone he's Yi-sol's real father. Now, you can argue with him. At that moment, Yeon-jin realizes the truth. Her husband has known everything all along. She thought she could outsmart him, but he was always one step ahead. Do-young is disgusted by her behavior, and he can no longer stand by her. This is the breaking point of their marriage. Devastated, Yeon-jin collapses to the ground, but just as she thinks all is lost, she receives a phone call, and a smirk spreads across her face. She manipulated Dong-eun's mother, getting her to secretly contact the parents of students, demanding gifts to fulfill her own desires. But when Dong-eun found out, she was surrounded by all the parents. Despite all her calculations, she failed to foresee her mother's betrayal once again. Dong-eun was utterly disappointed in her mother, a woman who only cared about money, even if it meant betraying her own daughter. Once, Dong-eun had been abandoned and sold out for money, and now, her mother was helping her enemies plot to destroy her life. At that moment, Dong-eun was filled with helpless rage. She had no way of fixing things, nothing left but to destroy her belongings in frustration. But the more violently she threw things, the harder her mother struck back. For Dong-eun, her misfortune was made worse by the fact that her own mother was one of the abusers. As she broke down in tears, Jae-jun stormed in, He demanded to know why Dong-eun had brought Do-young in to handle Yi-sol's situation. Furious and demanding an explanation, just as Dong-eun was about to unleash her anger on Jae-joon, her true savior appeared. Yeo-jong, driving a luxury car, casually pulled up behind Jae-joon, pretending to be passing by. With the same mocking tone as a stubborn young man, Yeo-jong teased Jae-joon. In doing so, he successfully saved Dong-eun and never revealed his true intentions. Despite her mother's betrayal, Dong-eun wasn't defeated. She quickly regained her composure and reached out to her best friend. Using her connections, she found people involved in the underworld. Knowing that Sara would be desperate for illegal substances after Gunwoo's death, Dong-eun exploited this weakness, arranging for Sara to secretly obtain substances in her father's church. When Sara experienced a hallucination, everyone saw that the daughter of the priest was involved with contraband. However, when Yeon-jin arrived, notified by Hyun-nam, it was too late. Yeon-jin dismissed Dong-eun's efforts, saying that since it was Sora's first offense, she would be released soon. Dong-eun, with a sly smile, responded, "Then you'd better be careful, Miss Weather Reporter." Yeon-jin, unaware of the gravity of the situation, didn't realize the trap she was walking into. At that moment, Dong-eun's sister had already published an article about Yeon-jin bullying others on the homepage of the TV station where Yeon-jin worked. When Yeon-jin saw the message in her company's group chat, she finally understood the danger. Dong-eun added, "Sara will be out soon, but you won't be so lucky if you're caught. You've killed someone, and it's not your first offense." Hearing these words, and seeing Dong-eun's confident smile, a chill ran down Yeon-jin's spine. Later, Sara was sent to the police station, and the bullying scandal involving the weather reporter quickly went viral online. While her name wasn't mentioned directly, Hyun-nam's comments immediately pointed the finger at Yeon-jin, sparking a huge online debate. Under the pressure of public opinion, Yeon-jin fled to a fortune-teller's house, refusing to go home. It wasn't until Do-young personally came to take her away that things started to settle. At this point, Do-young had to initiate emergency PR work. After all, Yeon-jin was still his first wife. Whether they would divorce or not depended on handling this PR crisis first to avoid damaging the company's stock market. But when Do-young saw Yeon-jin, with her shameless and defensive attitude during questioning by the lawyers, he couldn't bear it anymore. He never expected that, even with such a scandal exposed, his wife of many years could still act so arrogantly, without a shred of remorse. That was when Do-young made the final decision to leave her for good. As he was thinking about how to handle Yeon-jin, he ran into Yeo-jong again. Yeo-jong didn't hide her intentions, openly declaring that she was working with Dong-eun and was determined to help her get revenge. Dong-eun didn't want innocent people caught in the crossfire, but sometimes, realizing the true face of your partner can be a heart-wrenching pain. Meanwhile, Jae-joon was slow to catch on. He learned from a store clerk that Do-young had visited his store before and had even entered the dressing room. What surprised him more was that although the store's surveillance could view footage from the past month, all records from the days before Gunwoo's disappearance had mysteriously vanished. The store clerk revealed that Yeon-jin had requested the equipment be replaced, so now the surveillance system could only view footage after the changes. Just as Jae-joon was puzzled, Hae-jong came to him. She told Jae-joon that Gunwoo's tablet had been left with her, and she was the only one who knew the password. When she opened the tablet, she found some shocking recordings. The recordings were of Gunwoo's calls to everyone, including a meeting she had with Yeon-jin. Since Gunwoo's phone and the tablet were linked to the same ID, it was clear that Yeon-jin was the last person Gunwoo had met, and this was crucial evidence. This was the key evidence that could prove Yeon-jin's guilt. Jae-joon was thrilled with Hae-jong's initiative and asked her, "Would you like to be Yi-sol's stepmother?" After waiting so long for an opportunity, Hae-jong wasn't about to miss this chance. Meanwhile, Yeon-jin was still worried she had missed some key evidence. While rummaging through Jae-joon's store, she realized that Jae-joon had been spending more time with Hae-jong lately. Shocked, Yeon-jin rushed to Jae-joon's house to confront him, only to find Hae-jong gloating in triumph. It seemed Hyun-nam's information was spot on. However, Yeon-jin wasn't easily beaten. She mocked Hae-jong, saying she was just picking up a man who no one else wanted. But Hae-jong was determined to bring down Yeon-jin. Her revenge would come through manipulating Yeon-jin's relationship with Sara. She spread the rumor that Yeon-jin, in order to protect her image, had deliberately made Sara's scandal public, ensuring Sara would be locked up longer. After all, Sara knew how selfish Yeon-jin could be, and she was fully capable of such a thing. Meanwhile, Hyun-nam's husband had been threatening Young Ae and even waiting outside her house. When he discovered that Young Ae had likely killed more than one person, his threats intensified. leaving young Ae terrified. After all, besides her daughter and young June, only she knew the truth. But now, how could this mysterious person know so much? The more she thought about it, the more suspicious it seemed, and she immediately asked young June to speed up his work to gather information on this stranger. Hyun-nam, who had been eavesdropping, realized that this person had obtained her husband's details and immediately felt alarmed. She knew this person meant to kill, and so she warned Dong-eun, realizing the urgency of speeding up their plans. At school, Dong-eun could no longer stay because of her mother's actions. As she was about to leave, Dong-eun sincerely apologized to Yi-sol, but now, she had to deal with the problem that was her mother. Dong-eun's mother sneered, making it clear that no matter what, Dong-eun could never escape her. She even threatened that if Dong-eun refused to acknowledge her, she'd go to the police station and check where she had moved to. But this time, Dong-eun would no longer tolerate it. She deliberately lit a fire with her mother's emotions, pushing her until she completely lost control. Sure enough, the crazy woman snapped, knocking over the portable stove and setting the whole room on fire. She thought she'd won, that she had finally scared her timid daughter into submission, but she was wrong. In a panic, Dong-eun crawled towards her mother, a strange smile creeping up her face. This was her version of catching the prey by letting it chase. With that smirk on her face, a mix of laughter and tears, the security cameras in the room recorded it all. Dong-eun used this as leverage, sending her mother for a psychiatric evaluation. In the end, doctors confirmed that Dong-eun's mother was in a severely unstable mental state and qualified for institutionalization. As her only family, Dong-eun signed the papers without hesitation, sending her mother to a mental hospital. Years ago, it was a demon that dragged Dong-eun into the abyss. Now, Dong-eun was paying back the favor, giving her mother exactly what she deserved. At the crematorium, good news came. Young June seemed to have reached his breaking point. Unable to bear Young Jin and her daughter's manipulation any longer, he decided to retire early and take the money. He confirmed that the body was still at the crematorium, unaware that Dong-eun and her team had already set their sights on it. As soon as Young Jun left, Zhang and Dong-eun immediately sent people to move Gunwoo's body. Meanwhile, Young Jun met with Young Jin, but his intentions were clear: to extort a huge retirement pension from her. However, Young Jin didn't believe that Young Jun had cleaned up all the mess. With confidence, Young Jun took her to the abandoned crematorium's morgue, trying to prove everything was under control. But when he opened the morgue drawer, he found Gunwoo's body was missing. What he didn't know was that the body had already been moved to the site where So-hee was murdered years ago. Before long, the police arrived, and among the crowd watching, So-hee's mother once again witnessed the death of one of the people who harmed her daughter. On the other side, Young Jin, still unaware, received a phone call from Haijong. Gunwoo is dead. His body has been found by the police. Young Jin, you're finished. With betrayal after betrayal, police investigations, and Young Jun's blunders, Young Jin finally lost her temper. Not only had Young Jun lost the body, but he had also placed her in a vulnerable position. Furious, Young Jin accidentally knocked the button off her bag. At that very moment, she suddenly realized the crisis was much closer than she thought. Even worse, the police soon announced that they had discovered Gunwoo's body. Upon hearing this, Young Jin's first thought was to find someone to provide her with an alibi. The best candidate, of course, was Jae-jun, who she thought still had feelings for her. When Jae-jun learned that Young Jin was asking for a reconciliation, even using Yi-sol as leverage to get him to cover for her, he finally realized the person who killed Gunwoo was Young Jin. Her guilt was undeniable, but Jae-jun didn't immediately expose her. Instead, he allowed everything to unfold, as he believed reclaiming Yi-sol was his ultimate goal. Meanwhile, Young Jin thought her cunning plan had succeeded, but when she returned home, she found Sora, who had been released from prison, waiting for her at her doorstep. Seeing this person near her daughter made Young Jin uneasy. She feared that Sora would corrupt her child. Without hesitation, she dragged Sora into the closet, demanding to know why she had shown up uninvited. But Sora was no longer the person who would blindly follow Young Jin. She went straight to the point, asking Young Jin, "Did you purposely amplify the news about me, using the media to distract the public from your own problems?" Young Jin couldn't admit it. With a cold laugh, she dismissed Sora's accusations, not caring at all. But as her gaze shifted to her bag, her heart sank. She noticed that one button was missing from her bag, the same button she had left behind in the morgue. It could become the key evidence that would tie her to the crime. Panicking, Young Jin immediately stopped paying attention to Sora and rushed to the crematorium in the middle of the night, hoping to retrieve the button and erase all evidence. But when she arrived, she ran straight into Yeo-jong, who had been waiting for her. At that moment, Yeon-jin finally realized, not only was Yeo-jong allied with Dong-eun, but she was also the owner of the crematorium. Yeon-jin's mind raced as she began to panic. Fear crept in, but Yeo-jong only sneered at her, saying, "Whether the button is here or not doesn't matter, we already have everything we need." Before leaving, Yeo-jong casually told Yeon-jin, "Be careful driving in this weather." Yeon-jin didn't quite understand her words, but her heart was already overwhelmed with dread. Just then, her phone rang. When she answered, her face instantly turned pale. The message was clear: her mother had been in a car accident. Even more terrifying, someone had been killed in the crash. Her hands began to tremble as she realized this was no accident. The person who had been killed was none other than Hyun-nam's husband. It turned out that Young Ae had orchestrated the crash to eliminate the threat. She first had a medium arrange a meeting in her name, then notified Young-jun, who had been preparing to flee. Since the police discovered Gunwoo's body, Young-jun had started packing up, preparing to escape. He even asked his family to sell everything they could and send them overseas first. When Young Ae found out, suspicion arose. She started to worry that Young-jun might be in league with the person threatening her. After all, who else could know their secrets? Unaware, Young-jun became an unwitting accomplice, with Young Ae deliberately running over Hyun-nam's husband, forcing Young-jun to be the witness who would testify in her favor. In this country, there were no true friends, only co-conspirators driven by power and interest. At that moment, Young-jun realized just how tightly he was controlled, and the only witnesses to this crime were the medium and Dong-eun. So when the medium returned, Dong-eun intercepted her, using Young Ae's dealings with others as leverage to get the medium to help her. The next day, while Yeon-jin was with her mother at the medium's place, she received a call from her team, confirming that the person killed in the crash was indeed Hyun-nam's husband. Yeon-jin was stunned. She couldn't believe her mother had killed the abusive husband, and she began to question, was her mother working with Dong-eun? As Yeon-jin was lost in thought, the medium suddenly turned to her and shouted, "Yeon-jin, I am So-hee. Do you remember me?" This sent a chill down Yeon-jin's spine. Only the deceased So-hee would know such things. Was this a haunting? Even more terrifying, the medium, so deeply involved in the act, suddenly collapsed, suffocating on the altar. It seemed like divine punishment, a fitting end for the medium who had tormented so many young girls, and it left Yeon-jin convinced that vengeful spirits were real. Later, Yeon-jin called Hyun-nam to her house, mocking her as a lowly person. She then tried to force Hyun-nam to take the fall for her mother's crime. Hyun-nam silently listened as Yeon-jin finished speaking, then slapped her across the face. No one expected Hyun-nam to be so bold. Hitting Yeon-jin without hesitation, she declared, "As a mother, you constantly use other people's children as leverage. You're not fit to be a mother. If you keep pushing me, I'll expose your affair with Jae-jun." Yeon-jin, stunned and unable to recover, was confronted by her husband Do-young, who stood there, eyes locked on her as she crumbled in disgrace. Do-young had witnessed Yeon-jin's ruthless ambition firsthand and overheard her cruel actions. He was utterly disappointed, having come to this place only to confirm just how far gone Yeon-jin was. It was clear, she was beyond redemption. Do-young showed up after Jae-jun met with him, revealing Yeon-jin's murderous secret. He also played the recording from Gunwoo's tablet, hoping it would finally push them toward a divorce, allowing Jae-jun to fight for custody of their daughter. After hearing Yeon-jin's recorded confessions, Do-young was devastated. He felt deeply guilty for the victims and reached out to Dong-eun, wanting to make amends for Yeon-jin's wrongdoings. Dong-eun handed him a note with the address of So-hee's mother's house. Dong-eun wagered that, in the end, Yeon-jin would never repent to anyone. At that moment, Do-young saw Yeon-jin for who she truly was. He had given her too many chances. Soon, Yeon-jin was served divorce papers, and the media flooded with reports, turning her into the laughingstock of the public. Hyun-nam, who had completed her revenge, collapsed to the ground upon seeing her husband's lifeless body. At last, she had waited long enough. As she walked shakily out of the furnace room, leaning on the wall for support, all the years of suppressed pain and injustice came rushing out. She had endured countless nights of suffering, but it was only in this moment that she could truly let go of the years of humiliation, the hardships she'd faced, and the painful life that had finally been freed. Meanwhile, Yeon-jin's situation worsened. Not only was she mocked by everyone at the company, but her former best friend, Sara, also betrayed her. Sara uploaded the video of Yeon-jin bullying So-hee to the internet, causing Yeon-jin's reputation to crumble. Even when her boss confronted her, Jin remained defiant. She scribbled "I resign" on a piece of paper and handed it over. She still stubbornly insisted that she had only bullied classmates, never killed anyone. At this point, her lack of remorse was clear. Only her family might be able to deal with her now. When she returned home to see her daughter, she instructed the maid to take away all electronic devices, hoping to shield Yisol from the negative news. She lied, saying that things were a little tense between her and her father, but that it would be resolved soon. Yet Yisol already knew everything. She declared she would never be proud of her mother again. Jin was terrified, but her fear didn't stop her from doing what she did best, covering up her misdeeds. She admitted to bullying, but insisted she wasn't responsible for So-hee's death. She even revealed that So-hee had been pregnant before she died, attempting to shift the focus elsewhere. This tactic worked for the moment. At Gunwoo's funeral, Sara mocked Haejong. She was just a toy. You really think Jae-joon will treat her well for long? Furious, Haejong wasn't going to let Sara get away with it. With the tablet, she uncovered all their secrets, including Sara and Gunwoo's affair, which she promptly shared with the group. Enraged, Sara tried to find out who was behind it all, and that's when Jin appeared. In her rage, Sara blamed Jin, convinced she was the one behind it, but Sara soon realized she had been played. It wasn't Jin, it was Haejong. When Jae-joon learned that So-hee had been pregnant before her death, he glared at Jin with fury and stormed off, leaving Haejong and Sara to argue. Furious, Sara retaliated, grabbing a paintbrush and stabbing Haejong in the neck. This scene unfolded before Jin's eyes. She watched her so-called team fall apart, as suspicion and betrayal tore them apart. As a result, Sara was arrested and sent to prison for the attack. Jae-joon, having learned about So-hee's pregnancy, later went to meet Yeojong. He asked if it was still possible to test the DNA of the baby in So-hee's body. Yeojong confirmed that the person responsible for So-hee's pregnancy was Jae-joon himself. When Dong-eun found out, she realized she had underestimated Jae-joon. He was a complete playboy, and she suspected that Jin had known about his affair with So-hee, which led to her jealousy and the tragic events that followed. And that wasn't all. Jae-joon, seeking revenge on Jin, revealed her affair to her mother-in-law, cutting off Jin's future in the wealthy family. But the most tragic victim in all this was Jin's innocent daughter, Yisol. Although she was young, she knew everything. She hated her mother for being a devil and feared her father might abandon her. But when Do-yeon called out to her, arms wide open as he always had, Yisol, tearfully, ran into his embrace. Her apology was a painful moment for Do-yeon. He realized his daughter had learned the truth, so he comforted her, assuring her that nothing happening now was her fault, and that her father loved her. Do-yeon had always cherished his daughter, but Jin had taken their relationship for granted, destroying their marriage in the process. As for Haejong, after being stabbed by Sara, she barely survived, but lost her voice forever. She could no longer speak. Jae-joon, without a second thought, discarded her, declaring he had deleted all the contents from her tablet, so she could no longer use it as leverage. Abandoned and devastated, Haejong lost her dream of marrying into a rich family and ruined her entire life. Dong-eun appeared again, telling Haejong that she had received the punishment she deserved. Now, like Dong-eun, she needed revenge, and their goals aligned. Dong-eun gave Haejong an eyedropper filled with a special solution. She explained that if Haejong used it on Jae-joon's eye drops, it would blind him permanently. Haejong, determined to seek revenge, took the opportunity without hesitation. But Dong-eun wasn't done with Jin yet. She found Ae and, knowing about her connection to Jun, blackmailed her into handing over the designer bag she had hidden. Ae, initially planning to call Jun for help, was horrified to learn he had been killed. With no other option, Ae made a private deal with Dong-eun. Dong-eun's real goal wasn't the bags, it was to destroy the bond between Ae and her daughter, revealing that the bags were nothing but a ruse to test how strong their mother-daughter relationship really was. Jin, now completely broken, faced betrayal from everyone she knew: her husband, her daughter, even her friends. She was utterly alone. Just when she thought things couldn't get worse, she received a video message, a clip from Jae-joon's fitting room, showing the murder weapon used to kill Gunwoo on the table. Panicked, she rushed to the scene, only to find the police already there, collecting evidence. The police had received DNA from Yeojong, matching it to Jin's, and also found Gunwoo's DNA in her nails. Jin had walked right into the trap. The investigating officers couldn't help but feel that Dong-eun had quietly orchestrated everything. Though there was no solid proof, they all sensed her hand behind the entire revenge scheme. At that moment, Dong-eun realized that the police officer who had been pursuing her had once handled her own case. He understood her thirst for revenge and chose to remain silent. Meanwhile, Jae-jun, furious over Yi-sol being transferred to another school, stormed over to Do-young's place, but his calls were ignored. With nowhere else to turn, Jae-jun followed Dong-eun's guidance, and after using the special eye drops, his vision blurred. In a daze, he wandered onto a deserted construction site. Before he knew it, someone led him to the rooftop, and, before he could react, he was shoved off. The mysterious figure watched as Jae-jun plummeted to his death, landing in the cement prepared just for him. The person responsible for this elegant yet deadly act? None other than the powerful, loving father who had always protected his daughter. But that's not the end of it. Dong-eun knew there would be another round of chaos soon. She deliberately told Yeon-jin that someone else was responsible for killing Gun-woo. That night, Gun-woo was still alive when he tried to ask for help. A staff member living in the store heard him, and upon seeing Gun-woo covered in blood, instead of calling the police or offering help, the staff member picked up a bottle and struck him heavily. This man had assaulted her multiple times before, so the person who actually killed Gun-woo was the staff member. Dong-eun had recognized the staff member immediately. He was her former desk mate. After she dropped out, her desk mate became a new target for Yeon-jin and the others' bullying. So, in the entire scheme, Dong-eun knew who the real killer of Gun-woo was, but she told the others that the killer must be Yeon-jin, and it would definitely be Yeon-jin. Yeon-jin never imagined that she wasn't the true killer of Gun-woo, but she would never find out who the real murderer was. She would spend the rest of her days in prison, consumed by doubt. What made her even more desperate was that her mother was in the same prison. From now on, mother and daughter would be like strangers to each other, and the once arrogant weather anchor would never return to her past.